Hi, I'm Danny Lipford.
And I'm Chelsea Lipford-Wolf.
Thanks for watching this episode of Today's Homeowner here on YouTube. And don't forget to leave us a like and a comment.
And be sure to share with a friend, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you get notified of new videos.
Thanks and enjoy the show.
A front porch is a great place to relax. This week we'll be improving 3 very different porches.
Today's Homeowner with Danny Lipford, the voice of home improvement, with projects, tips, and ideas to help you improve your home.
This is a great porch, plenty of room, and basically is in very good shape considering it's over 100 years old. Now we do have some things we have to take care of on this porch, mainly repairing some water-damaged spindles that we have on the outside railing. There's so much damage on these spindles, the homeowners decided just to replace all of them so that he won't have to worry about that for a long time. Now our second porch that we'll look at is much smaller than this and on a much newer house than this one, where we have a concrete slab front porch that's causing a lot of drainage problems. We'll solve that problem by capping over the existing slab, and along the way we'll improve the look of the house considerably. Our third porch is where it had been screened several years ago and really is not looking very good. We're going to remove the screen, do a few other improvements, and really improve the curb appeal of that home. Now we're going to take care of all of this on this week's show, so don't go anywhere. This is just about a necessity on any front porch, the old porch swing. You know, porches are great because you can get out of the sun and kind of relax a little bit, breeze blowing, you can kind of keep up with the neighbors, and it's also a great place for the neighbors to come over and sit and chat a little while. Now the homeowners here tell me it's very hard to relax out here when you're looking around at all the water damage around the railings themselves. And let me show you what I mean. Now we're pretty lucky here on this porch in that there's a fairly long overhang. With a wider overhang like this, you're not worrying about so much water getting on the porch. But of course with blowing rains there will be some situations like that. And over the years you can see where some of the porch boards had to be replaced here, and they did a fair job, even though it would have been better if those had been laced in a little bit. But the damage on the railing is pretty significant down on this end of the porch, and the reason for that is a very common problem with homes in that they've let their landscaping grow a little bit closer to the porch than they should have, and as a result, when the railings get wet, they stay wet and cause it to rot a lot quicker. You can see here in the corner, obviously, we have some boards to replace down on the floor itself. Then the spindles, a lot of these are just about ready to completely come apart. So what we've done is we've taken one of the spindles next to it here that was in fair shape. We took it to the mill workshop so that they could reproduce the exact style of spindle that we need. Let's check in and see how our mill workshop's doing.
In order to reproduce the spindles that were on the house originally, have to have a sample, and we'll start with an existing piece and a turning square, and simply do a layout of where the profiles need to be, and from there we'll just start turning. Once we get a few of the edges knocked off, we got a caliper. We'll set the depth, then we'll start adding some profiles. We can work to an edge and get the round that we need, and then start with your pattern and you're there. It really comes from an awful lot of experience. Basically that's it, we're done. And you can lay this baluster right up on top of the other one, and you can hardly tell the difference.
With all of our spindles complete and out on the job, we can really move forward with the replacement of all the damaged wood we had on the handrails around our porch, but also a lot of porch boards. And we're really replacing a lot more than we had planned on because unfortunately we found a lot more damaged wood once we started tearing it out. Now, first thing we did is remove the rails along the perimeter of this part of the porch. Even had to jack up the column on the corner in order to slip the new boards underneath. Now we could have just pieced it in like they've done on several areas of the porch like this, but a butt joint like that really doesn't look very good. It needs to be spliced in, particularly areas along the edge. There's a number of them on this side of the porch here at the column, even right out in the middle. Well, the homeowner really didn't like this look, and neither do we, so he's decided to have us replace all of the boards full length all the way down this side of the porch, right back to where it 45s here on the corner of the porch. Now this means a lot more work and unfortunately a little more expense, but it's really the right way to go. Now since the homeowner's so committed to doing this the right way, we certainly want to do our part in actually priming both sides of the new treated wood. This will really seal out any chance of moisture getting in and causing problems down the road. Now we've got a lot more work to do since we've made this decision. More columns have to be jacked up as we work our way down the porch. Then we trim off all of the excess before we bevel and sand the outer edge of the decking. When it comes time to rebuild the rails, we actually reuse the old top rail since it's in great shape. The bottoms of the balusters are cut with an inward bevel so that they mate with the bottom rail, which we created ourselves to match the original one. The tricky part is making sure the spacing works so that everything matches when we're done. What a nice tight joint on the porch floor. That really looks good. And we're almost finished with this one. A little bit of painting on the floor, it's complete. A little priming and painting on some of our spindles. It'll all be done. We'll take a look at it after the painter's completed all of his work. Now we're about to show you another porch of a different type that has a bit of a problem that we're solving using brick pavers. But first, our simple solution.
It's time for this week's Simple Solution from home repair expert Joe Truini.
With the popularity of home computers and electronics, many homeowners are now buying these power strips, which allow you to plug in several pieces of equipment from one location.
These are real handy, Joe, but it's not that easy to mount with the slots that you have on the back. It's pretty hard to determine exactly where those screws need to go.
You're right, because the problem with these keyhole slots is that once you hold the outlet strip in position, there's no way of knowing exactly where the screw locations are. But here's a trick that works without having to measure exactly where to drill the holes, because you can see if you don't line it up exactly, you won't get the screw into the slot. What you need to do is take a plain piece of paper and a pencil and just hold the paper tight along the back of the power strip. There you go, and feel for the, there you go, you can almost see them just by rubbing it, but once you find the location of the keyhole slot, just rub your pencil on it and you get a really clear outline of the slot and the hole itself, which is where we want to mark the screws. There you go. Now just take this, hold it in position,
that's
and you
pretty
can use
easy
an
there.
awl to mark the center of the screws.
Okay, I mark the big part of it there.
Yeah, right in the middle of the screw hole itself.
And there.
Then once you remove it, that's exactly where we
Oh, that's great. That's perfect.
drive in the screw.
This definitely looks different than the house we were at before. Before it was 100 years old, now it's closer to 35 years old. Still, the porch is a very important part of the overall look of this house and the design. It has a nice wide entryway. It really makes you feel welcome when you come up to the door, and still has space on either side that you can position plants as we've done here, or maybe even a chair along the way. The problem is, over the years, apparently the front yard had been filled in a good bit with either topsoil or possibly another layer of sod, and as a result it's actually higher than the surface of the porch. Now when it rains, the water rolls down the front of the yard and stands on the porch. Now when it's raining, it's one of the nicest times to be on a porch, but not very pleasant if your feet are getting wet. The solution is to raise the level of this slab up a little bit so that water will not run onto it. And we could do this with concrete. We have enough space here that we could actually pour a little slab over this, but basically it would look just like it does now. We've suggested to the homeowners that we could use a brick paver that would be thick enough to take care of the water problem, but will add a nice decorative element to the front of the house. Now by doing this, it will make it look a lot better and definitely solve the drainage problem. First, we have to remove the columns so that the brick pavers can go under them. Dennis and Joe begin by jacking up the porch roof slightly, just enough to take the weight off of the columns so that they can work them out. These notched temporary supports are propped in place and secured before the jack is lowered back down. With the porch surface cleared, we're ready for the brick mason. He begins by laying the brick pavers around the perimeter of the porch so that he can establish the proper fall or slope away from the house for drainage. The outer band is turned perpendicular to the porch in what is often called a soldier course. The mortar is troweled onto the concrete slab and each brick is pressed in one at a time. A string marks the exact height or level at which the brick should rest, and the masons are careful to keep the space between the bricks consistent. The bricks in the middle are laid in a running bond pattern. The staggered layout in this pattern requires that a few bricks are cut at the beginning of each of the rows. Mortar is squeezed from a grout bag, which resembles a large cake decorating bag, to fill the voids between the bricks. Finally, the surface is troweled smooth and the bricks are brushed vigorously to remove any excess mortar. Our brickwork looks good, and our brick masons were able to tuck it right under the door sill with a nice slope so that if any rain blows into the porch, it'll roll right off just like it should. Now, using the solid brick enabled them to give us a nice finished edge on the front of the porch here where it meets the sidewalk, but because of that increase in the height of the porch overall, we've had to do a good bit of work in cutting our existing aluminum columns. First thing we did is to measure down from the beam to the new surface to determine just how high the columns needed to be. Then measuring that on the aluminum columns, marking it, and then using a reciprocating saw with a metal cutting blade allowed Dennis to cut off just what we needed to put the columns back in place. Now, we've already completed 2 of the columns, and they're putting the final touches on the 3rd column to get it nice and plumb and to make sure our margin on the front of our porch is the same with all of the columns we have. One more column in place and this porch will be complete. Now, that'll be 2 porches with 1 more to go. Now, the next porch is where someone over the past few years had screened in this front porch on this home, and it really doesn't look very good. The idea was good, but the execution was very poor. We're going to go back and remove all of the screen, take care of a few improvements to really enhance the curb appeal of this home. But first, check this out.
Let's join Danny at the Home Center to check out this week's best new product, brought to you by the Home Depot.
If you're considering installing a screen door on any opening you may have around your home, but you don't have the swing room that's required for a conventional screen door, and you may just not want to lose the unobstructed view to the outside, then a retractable screen may be just the thing you need. Now, this one from ODL is so easy to install. They have actually designed this for the do-it-yourselfer, and they say it takes less than an hour to install. It takes that long to install any screen door. Now, you start by installing the side piece, then you have a header piece, and then you have another piece that attaches to most any door seal that you may have on your door. Then the last step is the little magnetic catch right here, and that's all that's needed to complete the installation. Now, the screen itself is a heavy-duty fiberglass screen that's designed to resist any tears from children or pets. And this particular one has a slam-proof design that will prevent any fingers from getting pinched behind the framework itself. Now, it also has some very heavy-duty weather stripping in the header piece and the lower piece to prevent any insects or dirt from getting inside the home. Now, this might be just what you're looking for if you're looking for protection from the insects, but no obstruction to the nice view you might have outside. This is a fairly nice looking smaller home, but you'll have to admit this front porch needs a little help. Over the years, they've enclosed this porch with screen and supporting it with 2x4s and 2x2s, and for some crazy reason, they've even put up a wrought iron railing on the front of this, and it's kind of a maintenance nightmare because you have to take this off in order to paint it properly, and you can tell they haven't done that in a lot of years. So in order to make this whole porch look a lot better, I've enlisted the help of Greg to kind of help me remove all this ugliness with the storm door and the rails and all of this, and then we're going to replace it with a real attractive wood handrail system that'll go all the way around the porch and have railing coming down on each side of the concrete steps. And along the way, we're going to take care of a few things like this broken step here that we'll have to patch and repair, and then the owner's actually participating in a little bit of this work by taking care of all of the painting herself. So we need to take care of getting all the wood in place so that this weekend she can take care of the painting. The first things to go are the screen door and the lovely wrought iron. We're also moving the plants, the swing, and any personal items so that we can get aggressive in removing the screen. Really aggressive. The only positive to something that's poorly constructed in the first place is that it can be more easily deconstructed later. It's amazing how much bigger this porch suddenly seems. In addition to the screen and the frame, we're also removing 2 of the 4 4x4 columns before we begin cleaning up some of the mess we've made. This porch is already looking a lot better, just being more open. Now, we'll be building our handrails for a couple different reasons. One, it'll certainly look better having some nice wood hand railings around on this particular house. And the building codes require us to have some type of handrail to prevent anyone from possibly walking off of the porch. Now, we're several feet off the ground, so our railings will be around 36 inches high. That should be sufficient. And also, our balusters will be spaced around 6-inch centers, which is also suggested by the code here. Now, we're using some of the same 4x4 posts that we removed earlier, and the reason we removed the ones here on the front is that originally they were 32 inches apart to accommodate the screen door we had. By taking these and moving them out a little bit, we'll widen this opening and make it a little more inviting coming up onto the porch, and it'll make it a lot easier for us to put our handrails on either side of the steps. Now, once we get these in place, we can really start on our handrails. The rails themselves will be made from pressure-treated 2x4 stock and the spindles from 2x2 stock. For the bottom rail, we're using a 2x4 on edge and toe nailing the 2x2s on top of it. To simplify this process and ensure consistent spacing, I'm using a 2x2 gauge block to separate the spindles. The top goes a bit quicker because the 2x4 is mounted horizontally. No toe nailing, just line up the spindles and nail them through the rail. Installing these sections is easier than it might seem. A 2x4 spacer determines the height, center them on the post, and nail away. For the stair rails, we add a 4x4 on either side of the steps, then use a 2x4 to mark the angles on the post before we cut them to the proper height with a circular saw. The rail angles are cut on the miter saw and the top rails are nailed in place. We measure and mark the lower rails from the top ones, and once they're nailed in place, we begin nailing in the spindles. The spacing is the same. The only real difference is the angle cuts on each ends of the 2x2s. All of our woodwork is completely finished on our handrails. Now it's time for the finishing touches. We're applying 1 coat of primer, but the homeowner will have to take care of 2 additional coats to finish everything out. Now, we're putting the primer on today so that it'll be ready for her tomorrow. To add a little interest to the railing, the homeowner, Leslie, is painting the top rail black. She's also using this color on the porch floor, but first the concrete has to be cleaned with solvent. While Leslie's finishing painting the porch, let's look at this week's Around the Yard.
Let's head outside for Around the Yard with lawn and garden expert Tricia Craven-Worley. Brought to you by TimberTech Composite Decking.
Okay, Tricia, I did just what you asked. I took a 2-liter soda bottle, I cut the bottom off, I threw away the cap, and I guess I've created a garden funnel for you.
You have, and we're going to invert it over this pesky weed.
Okay, I've got a lot of weeds just like that in my yard.
Well, don't we all? Well, you know, the important thing when you're trying to kill weeds is to contain whatever you're putting on them.
Okay.
In this instance, I'm going to cover this weed, most of it, and I'm spraying a vinegar solution.
Okay, how does vinegar take care of it?
Well, vinegar, once the sun acts on it, it is an acid, and so it will begin to burn the weed away. It will take a little bit longer than maybe some of the other pesticides or herbicides.
Okay, but still, you're containing it like this is a good idea if you were using a regular weed killer.
Absolutely, yeah. Any kind of weed killer, you definitely want to keep it off of the healthy plants. Here we've got these beautiful impatiens, and it would be such a shame to have some of that spray go over them.
Now, what about larger areas? Because I have a lot more weeds in my yard than that.
Oh, don't we all? I would suggest that either you use a larger juice bottle, I do that sometimes, and then if you have a really big area, you can use something like a cardboard box, and then you would just spray within that cardboard box. Now, the really important thing is when you remove any of these containers that you don't brush up against the healthy plants and have some of that weed killer get on it.
I see. Well, that's a great tip. With less than $150 for all the materials on this porch renovation and 1 hard day's work, we've made a big improvement on the appearance of this porch. Just think about what it looked like before with all of the screening and the very neglected rusty wrought iron railing. This is quite an improvement. Now, the historic house that we worked on earlier had a lot of problems with water damage on both the handrails and the porch itself. By replacing all of that with a good quality wood and getting an excellent paint job on it will really make it last and look good for a long, long time. And the more contemporary house that we took care of the big problem with drainage on the front porch by adding the brick pavers to raise the porch a bit will solve that problem and it looks pretty darn good as well. Hey, I hope we gave you some ideas you can use around your home. I'm Danny Lipford. We'll see you next week.
Hey, thanks for watching this episode of Today's Homeowner. And don't forget to comment, like, and hit the bell icon so that we can notify you when new videos are posted.
And don't go anywhere, click around and continue the home improving fun.